Before we begin this incredible story, please subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so you never miss amazing stories like this one. Now, let's dive into the remarkable tale of the woman they called Falcon. The sun was barely rising over the Nevada desert when Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen stepped onto the tarmac at Naval Special Warfare Command. The morning air was cool, but she knew the real heat was waiting inside the briefing room. Today marked the beginning of something unprecedented in the history of the Navy SEALs. Sarah was about to become the first woman to train alongside one of the most elite SEAL teams in the country. For a joint special operations mission, Sarah had earned her place. Here, through years of grueling work, she was a combat pilot with over 200 missions under her belt, flying everything from reconnaissance to direct action support. Her record was spotless, her skills undeniable. But none of that mattered to the 12 men waiting in that briefing room. To them, she was an outsider, a disruption to their brotherhood, someone who needed to prove herself all over again as she walked through the doors of the compound. Sarah could feel the weight of a dozen pairs of eyes on her. The hallway seemed longer than it should be, each step echoing off the concrete walls. She had faced enemy fire, mechanical failures at 30,000 feet, and situations that would make most people freeze. But this was different. This was about respect, about proving that her presence here was not just politics or some publicity stunt. The briefing room door was already open when she arrived. Inside, the members of SEAL Team 7 sat in various positions around the room. Some leaned against walls, others sprawled in chairs, and a few stood with arms crossed. Their leader, Commander Jack Hartley, was a man in his late 30s with a face that looked like it had been carved from granite. His reputation preceded him. He had led more successful operations than most SEALs would see in a lifetime. Commander Hartley looked up when Sarah entered. His expression was unreadable, professional but cold. The room fell silent. Sarah walked to the front, her flight suit crisp and clean, her bearing confident but not arrogant. She had learned long ago that confidence was necessary. Overconfidence would get you killed or worse, rejected by those whose respect you needed. "Good morning," Sarah said, her voice steady and clear. "I know this is new territory for all of us. I am here because my skills are needed for the upcoming operation, and I intend to pull my weight just like every person in this room." One of the SEALs, a broad-shouldered man with a thick beard, snorted. He did not try to hide his skepticism. His name tag read Rodriguez. "With all due respect, ma'am, we have been doing this for years. We have our systems, our ways of operating. Having someone new, especially someone who has never worked ground operations, that is a risk." Sarah met his gaze without flinching. "I understand your concern, Rodriguez. You are right that I have not done your job. But you have not done mine either. This operation requires air support that is precise, immediate, and flexible. That is what I bring. I am not here to replace anyone or prove that I am tougher than you. I am here because the mission needs what I can do." The room remained tense, but a few of the men exchanged glances. Commander Hartley stepped forward, his arms still crossed. He studied Sarah for a long moment before speaking. "We will see, Lieutenant Commander. Talk is easy. Out there, when things go sideways, that is when we find out what people are made of. You will train with us for the next 4 weeks. If you can keep up, if you can show us that you understand how we operate and that we can trust you, then we will talk about integration." Sarah nodded. "Fair enough, Commander. I would not expect anything less." The training began immediately, and it was nothing like Sarah had anticipated. She had maintained peak physical fitness throughout her career. Running, swimming, and weight training were all part of her routine. But SEAL training was a different beast entirely. The first day started with a 5-mile run in full gear before the sun was fully up, followed by ocean swims in frigid water, obstacle courses that seemed designed by someone with a cruel sense of humor, and hand-to-hand combat drills that left her bruised and exhausted. But Sarah did not complain. She did not ask for special treatment or modifications. When she fell behind on a run, she pushed harder. When the cold water made her muscles scream, she kept swimming. When she hit the ground during combat drills, she got back up. The SEALs watched her, some with open skepticism. others with grudging curiosity. By the end of the first week, Sarah had learned something important. These men were not trying to break her out of malice. They were testing her because their lives depended on trust. In combat, hesitation or weakness could get people killed. They needed to know that anyone working with them could handle the pressure, the pain, and the chaos. One evening, after a particularly brutal day of training, Sarah sat alone in the mess hall, her body aching in places she did not know could hurt. Rodriguez walked in, grabbed a tray of food, and after a moment of hesitation, sat down across from her. He did not say anything at first, just started eating. Sarah waited, sensing that this was a significant moment. "You did good today," Rodriguez finally said, not looking up from his food. Most people would have quit by now. Sarah took a sip of water, her throat dry from hours of shouting commands during tactical drills. "I am not most people," she replied simply. Rodriguez looked up then, and for the first time, she saw something other than skepticism in his eyes. "Maybe not," he admitted, "but you still have a lot to prove." Sarah smiled slightly. "I know, and I will." The second week of training brought new challenges that tested Sarah in ways she had never experienced. Commander Hartley decided it was time to see how she handled the tactical side of operations. The SEALs operated in a world where split-second decisions meant the difference between success and catastrophe, and they needed to know if Sarah could think like they did when chaos erupted around her. The training exercise was designed to simulate a hostage rescue in an urban environment. The team would breach a building, neutralize hostile targets, and extract civilians while under fire. Sarah's role was to coordinate from a command position, simulating how she would provide air support and intelligence from above while understanding what the ground team needed in real time. The exercise began at 300 hours. The night was dark, with only a sliver of moon providing natural light. Sarah wore night vision goggles and carried a radio, positioned on a rooftop overlooking the mock compound. Below her, SEAL Team 7 moved like shadows, approaching the target building with practiced precision. She could hear their breathing through the radio, the quiet click of weapons being checked, the barely audible footsteps on gravel. Falcon, this is Ground 1. Commander Hartley's voice came through her earpiece. "We are in position. Give me a sit rep on the target building." Sarah's calcine had been assigned to her during pilot training years ago. She had earned it by having the sharpest eyes in her squadron, able to spot targets and threats before anyone else. Now, as she scanned the building through her scope, those skills were being put to a different test. Ground 1, Falcon. I have visual on 2 hostiles on the second floor, east side. They are stationary, possibly guarding something. Ground floor appears clear, but there is a blind spot on the north entrance. You will need to approach from the west. Copy that, Falcon. We are moving now. Sarah watched as the team split into 2 groups, flowing around the building like water. Her heart pounded as she tracked their movement. Simultaneously scanning for threats and keeping track of each team member's position, this was harder than flying. In the cockpit, she was in control, making decisions that affected her own fate. Here, she was guiding others. And any mistake she made could get them killed, even in training. Suddenly, one of the training instructors acting as a hostile appeared in a third-floor window, a position Sarah had not reported. He raised his weapon toward the advancing SEALs. She had less than 2 seconds to react. Ground 1, hostile third-floor center window, aimed at your position. The team reacted instantly, taking cover as simulated gunfire erupted. They returned fire, neutralizing the threat, but the exercise had just become more complicated. More hostiles poured out of the building. Sarah found herself calling out positions rapid fire. Her voice calm despite the adrenaline surging through her system. 2 more east side, ground level. 1 moving to flank you from the south. Friendly fire corridor is clear on your 6. The firefight lasted 8 minutes, though it felt like hours. When the smoke cleared and the exercise ended, Sarah climbed down from her perch, her hands shaking slightly from the adrenaline dump. She had done well. But she knew she had missed that third-floor window initially. Commander Hartley gathered the team for a debrief. He ran through the exercise with clinical precision, pointing out what went right and what went wrong. When he got to Sarah's performance, the room went quiet. Lieutenant Commander Chen missed a hostile position that could have compromised the team, he said bluntly. That is unacceptable in a real operation. However, his tone shifted slightly. Her recovery was fast, and her subsequent calls were accurate and timely. More importantly, she kept her head when things went wrong. That is what matters. He looked directly at Sarah. You made a mistake. Own it, learn from it, and do not let it happen again. Sarah nodded, meeting his gaze. I will not, Commander. I should have done a more thorough sweep before giving the all clear. One of the other SEALs, a quiet man named Patterson, spoke up. For what it is worth, ma'am, your calls during the firefight were solid. You did not panic, and you prioritized threats correctly. That third floor was a tough spot. The instructors put it there specifically to test you. Sarah appreciated the words, but she did not let herself off the hook. Close was not good enough, not in this world. That night, she spent 2 hours reviewing the exercise, memorizing the layout, identifying what she had missed and why. She would not make the same mistake twice. As the days progressed, something began to shift in the team's dynamic. The SEALs started including Sarah in their informal gatherings. The late-night card games, the meals, the jokes that helped them blow off steam. It was not a dramatic change, but rather a gradual acceptance. They saw that she was not trying to prove she was better than them. She was simply trying to be good enough to stand beside them. Rodriguez had been one of her harshest critics, became an unexpected ally. During a particularly difficult training scenario involving underwater navigation and combat swimming, Sarah struggled with the weight of her gear in the strong current. Rodriguez appeared beside her in the murky water, signaling for her to follow his lead. He showed her a technique for using the current instead of fighting it, a small adjustment that made a huge difference. When they surfaced, Sarah thanked him. He shrugged, water dripping from his beard. You would do the same for us up there, he said, pointing at the sky. We are starting to figure that out. But the real test was still coming. Commander Hartley called Sarah into his office at the end of the 3rd week. His expression was serious as he gestured for her to sit. The mission they had been training for was being moved up. They would deploy in 1 week instead of 4. The intelligence indicated that the window for the operation was closing faster than anticipated. This changes things, Hartley said. You have trained hard, and you have earned a measure of respect from the team. But 3 weeks is not the same as 4. I need to know, and I need you to be honest. Are you ready for this? Sarah considered the question carefully. She thought about everything she had learned, the mistakes she had made, the progress she had achieved. She thought about the trust that was slowly building between her and the team. Finally, she met Hartley's eyes and answered, I am ready, Commander. I will not let the team down. Hartley studied her for a long moment, then nodded. I believe you. Now let us make sure you are as prepared as possible. The next week is going to be intense. The final week of preparation was unlike anything Sarah had experienced in her military career. Every hour was accounted for, every minute used to refine their coordination and sharpen their skills. The team trained from dawn until well past midnight, running through scenario after scenario until their movements became instinctive. Sarah learned to anticipate what the team would need before they asked for it, and they learned to trust her eyes in the sky. The mission itself was sensitive and dangerous. A group of humanitarian aid workers had been taken hostage in a remote region by a well-armed militant group. Intelligence suggested the hostages were being held in a compound deep in hostile territory, and time was running out. The operation required perfect coordination between air and ground forces. Sarah would fly close air support, providing real-time intelligence and covering fire if needed. While SEAL Team 7 executed the rescue on the ground, during the final briefing, Commander Hartley laid out the plan in detail. Satellite imagery showed the compound was protected by high walls, guard towers, and an unknown number of hostile combatants. The hostages were believed to be held in the central building, but their exact location was unclear. The team would insert via helicopter 2 kilometers from the target and approach on foot under cover of darkness. Sarah would arrive in her fighter aircraft minutes before the assault began, providing overwatch and eliminating any threats that could compromise the mission. As Hartley spoke, Sarah studied every detail of the compound layout, memorizing distances, angles, and potential problem areas. She noted where the blind spots were, where defenders might position themselves, where the team would be most vulnerable. This was different from her previous combat missions. Before, she had flown against distant targets, vehicles, and buildings. This time, she would be protecting people she knew, people she had trained with, people who were counting on her, the night before deployment. The team gathered for what had become a tradition before dangerous operations. They shared a meal together, not saying much, just being present with one another. Sarah sat among them, no longer feeling like an outsider. Rodriguez told a terrible joke that made everyone groan. Patterson shared a story about his daughter's soccer game. Commander Hartley raised a glass of water and a quiet toast to the team. These small moments of normalcy helped balance the weight of what lay ahead. Later that evening, Sarah walked out to the flight line to inspect her aircraft. She ran her hands along the fuselage, checking every panel and system personally. Her crew chief, a veteran maintainer named Garcia, had already done a thorough inspection, but Sarah needed this ritual. It helped her focus, helped her transition from the social world of the team to the solitary responsibility of the cockpit. "You are going to do great," Ma'am, Garcia said, approaching with a clipboard. "This bird is in perfect shape, and from what I hear, so is the plan." Sarah smiled at her. "Thank you, Chief. Just make sure she is ready to bring me home." "Always," Garcia replied with a confident nod. The morning of the mission arrived with clear skies and perfect weather. Sarah went through her preflight routine with practiced efficiency, her movements automatic after thousands of hours in the cockpit. She climbed into the aircraft, strapped in, and began the startup sequence. The engines roared to life, and she felt the familiar vibration through her seat. This was her element, her domain. Here, she was not trying to prove anything. She simply was. The flight to the operational area took 2 hours. Sarah used the time to review the mission parameters one more time, visualizing every phase of the operation. She checked in with the Airborne Command Center, confirmed her weapon systems were functioning properly, and ran through emergency procedures in her mind. As she approached the target area, she switched to the tactical frequency that connected her directly to Commander Hartley and his team. "Falcon is on station," she reported, her voice calm and professional. "I have good visibility. Awaiting your call." "Copy, Falcon. Ground team is 30 minutes out. Maintain all where." Sarah circled high above the compound, her sensors scanning for any signs of activity. Through her targeting pod, she could see the compound in remarkable detail, despite the darkness. Thermal imaging showed heat signatures moving around the buildings. She counted at least 15 hostiles, maybe more inside the structures. Guard towers were manned at each corner. This was going to be tight. As the minutes ticked by, Sarah watched the team's approach through her sensors. They moved with incredible stealth, covering the 2 kilometers without alerting any sentries. She marveled at their discipline and skill. When they reached the perimeter of the compound, they held position, waiting for her final assessment. "Ground 1, Falcon. I count 15 visible hostiles, for in towers, 11 on patrol or stationary. Central building shows multiple heat signatures, cannot confirm hostages but likely location. Your approach from the west is clear. East side has 2 guards smoking near the gate. They are not paying attention. Copy all, Falcon. Stand by for execution." The next few minutes stretched like hours. Sarah's heart pounded as she watched the team move into position. She adjusted her orbit to give herself the best possible angle on the compound. Her weapons were armed and ready. If anything went wrong, she would be their guardian angel, delivering precision fire to protect them. "Go, go, go." Commander Hartley's voice cut through the radio, and the operation exploded into action. The team breached the compound wall simultaneously at 2 points, moving with practiced efficiency. Sarah watched through her sensors as they neutralized guards with suppressed weapons, moving like ghosts through the compound. So far, the plan was working perfectly. Then everything changed. A hostile Sarah had not seen, hidden in a blind spot near the central building, emerged and opened fire on the team. The radio erupted with voices. Contact. East side. Man down. We need suppression on that position now. Sarah's training took over. She had already been tracking movement near that area, and she rolled her aircraft into an attack run with practiced precision. Her targeting system locked onto the hostile's position. She had to be careful. The team was close, too close for anything but the most accurate fire. Ground 1, Falcon is hot. Keep your heads down. She released her weapon, a small diameter precision munition designed for exactly this type of situation. 2 seconds later, the hostile's position erupted in a controlled explosion. The firing stopped. Ground 1, threat neutralized. What is your status? 1 wounded, not critical. We are pressing forward. Good shot, Falcon. Keep us covered. The team pushed forward into the central building while Sarah maintained her orbit overhead, her eyes scanning every shadow and corner of the compound through her sensors. Her pulse was racing, but her hands were steady on the controls. She had trained for this, prepared for this, and now she was living it. Below her, the men she had come to respect were risking everything, and she was their lifeline. Falcon, Ground 1. We have located the hostage's second floor, northeast corner. 5 civilians, all appear mobile. We are securing the room now. Sarah felt a wave of relief, but kept her focus sharp. The hardest part was still ahead. Getting in was one thing. Getting out with 5 additional people who were likely terrified and possibly injured was another challenge entirely. She scanned the surrounding area for any signs of reinforcements or threats that might interfere with the extraction. Ground 1, be advised. I am seeing vehicle movement 1 kilometer north of your position. 2, possibly 3 vehicles heading your way. They will reach the compound in approximately 4 minutes. Copy, Falcon. We need to move fast. Can you slow them down? Sarah calculated quickly. The vehicles were moving on a dirt road through sparse terrain. She had 1 more precision munition in her cannon. It would be enough. Affirmative, Ground 1. I will buy you time. She banked her aircraft toward the approaching vehicles, descending to get a better angle. Through her targeting pod, she could see 3 pickup trucks loaded with armed fighters, probably responding to reports of the attack. They were moving fast, desperate to reach their compound before it was too late. Sarah armed her last precision munition and selected the lead vehicle. The weapon released smoothly, tracking toward its target with deadly accuracy. The explosion lit up the night, and the lead vehicle disintegrated in a ball of flame. The other 2 trucks swerved wildly, one sliding off the road entirely. The fighters poured out, taking cover and scanning the sky, but in the darkness, they had no chance of spotting her. Sarah made a strafing run with her cannon, the high-velocity rounds tearing into the ground around the remaining vehicles. It was not meant to destroy them, but to pin them down. Keep them scared and scattered. Ground 1, hostile reinforcements are neutralized or suppressed. You have your window, Falcon. You are a guardian angel. We are moving to extraction point now. Sarah pulled up from her strafing run and repositioned to cover the team's withdrawal. She could see them on her sensors, moving quickly through the compound, with the hostages in the center of their formation. They were exposed, crossing the open ground beyond the walls. Sarah knew there could still be threats lurking in the shadows. Her eyes swept across her displays constantly, looking for any sign of danger. The extraction helicopter came in low and fast, touching down just long enough for the team and hostages to board. Sarah watched the whole process, her finger hovering near her weapon's release in case any threat emerged. The helicopter lifted off, and she heard Commander Hartley's voice one more time. Falcon, Ground 1. All personnel are secure. We are clear of the target area. Thank you for having our backs. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Ground 1, Falcon? Anytime. I am heading home. See you on the ground? The flight back to base was surreal. The adrenaline began to wear off, replaced by a bone-deep fatigue and a sense of accomplishment unlike anything Sarah had felt before. She had flown countless missions, but this was different. This time, she had been part of a team in the truest sense. She had not just been supporting faceless troops on the ground. She had been protecting people she knew, people who trusted her, and she had not let them down. When she landed and climbed out of her aircraft, the sun was beginning to rise. The warm light felt good on her face after hours in the cold cockpit. Chief Garcia was waiting with her usual smile. "Welcome back, ma'am. I heard it got exciting out there." Sarah nodded, pulling off her helmet. "You could say that. The bird performed perfectly, Chief." Garcia patted the aircraft affectionately. "She always does when it matters." Sarah made her way to the debrief room, where the rest of the team was already gathering. When she walked in, the room went quiet for a moment. Then Rodriguez stood up and started clapping. One by one, the others joined in, a genuine show of respect and appreciation. Commander Hartley walked over, extending his hand. "Outstanding work out there, Lieutenant Commander. You saved lives tonight, including probably a few of ours. That shot on the hostel and the compound was perfect. And your work on those reinforcements gave us the time we needed." Sarah shook his hand firmly. "I just did my job, Commander. You all did the hard part." Hartley smiled slightly. "We are a team. Everyone's part matters. You proved that tonight." The debrief took several hours, going through every phase of the operation in detail. The hostages were safe and already receiving medical attention. The wounded SEAL, a young operator named Jenkins, had taken a round to his shoulder, but would make a full recovery. The mission was being called a complete success, and Sarah's role was being specifically highlighted in the reports going up the chain of command. Later that day, after catching a few hours of sleep, Sarah found herself back in the mess hall. She was exhausted, but too wired to rest properly. Patterson sat down across from her with 2 cups of coffee, sliding one over. "Figured you could use this." Sarah took it gratefully. "Thanks. I am still coming down from the adrenaline." Patterson nodded knowingly. "It takes a while. But you handled it like you have been doing this your whole career. That thing you did with the reinforcements, that was smart thinking, just seemed like the right call at the time," Sarah said. "Everything happened so fast." "That is combat," Patterson replied. "All the planning in the world, and then chaos happens, and you have to adapt. You did that tonight." "We all did." Rodriguez and several others drifted over. And soon, Sarah found herself surrounded by the team, everyone sharing stories and decompressing together. They talked about the close calls, the moments of fear, and the relief when everyone made it out. These conversations were important, Sarah realized. They processed the trauma and stress together, supporting each other through the aftermath of violence and danger. "Commander." Hartley appeared in the doorway and cleared his throat to get everyone's attention. "Listen up. I just got off the phone with command. They are very pleased with how the operation went. The hostages are all going to be fine, and we accomplished the mission with minimal friendly casualties." He paused, looking at Sarah. "They specifically wanted me to pass along their appreciation to Lieutenant Commander, and her performance exceeded all expectations." The team erupted in cheers and applause. Sarah felt her face flush with embarrassment and pride. Hartley continued, "There is something else. Due to the success of this operation and the effectiveness of our integrated approach, Command is establishing a new protocol for joint operations. Lieutenant Commander Chen is being assigned as our permanent air liaison, and we will be working together on future missions." The room erupted again, and Sarah felt overwhelmed by the acceptance and camaraderie. She had started this journey as an outsider, someone who had to prove herself every step of the way. Now, she was part of something bigger, a team that had been forged through shared hardship and tested in the crucible of combat. The team breached the main building, and Sarah continued to circle overhead, scanning for any additional threats. Her fuel was getting low, and the weather was worsening. Clouds were rolling into the valley, reducing visibility with every passing minute. She knew they were running out of time. "Falcon, ground 1. We have the target secured. 2 enemy combatants captured alive. We are preparing for extraction, but we have wounded. Jenkins took another hit and Rodriguez is injured. We need immediate medevac." Sarah's heart sank. Jenkins had been wounded on their first mission together, and now he was hurt again. Rodriguez, who had become a good friend, was also down. Copy. Ground 1. Medical helo is standing by. What is your status on mobility? We can move, but it is going to be slow. We are carrying 2 wounded plus 2 prisoners. Estimate 10 minutes to reach the extraction point. Sarah checked her fuel gauge. She had maybe 20 minutes of loiter time left, and that was cutting it close. The weather was getting worse, with clouds now filling much of the valley. But there was no question in her mind about what she needed to do. Understood. I will maintain coverage until you are out. Just keep moving. The next 10 minutes were some of the longest of Sarah's life. She watched the team moving slowly through the difficult terrain, carrying their wounded and prisoners. Every shadow could hide another enemy. Every ridge could conceal an ambush. She flew as low as she dared, weaving between the clouds that threatened to obscure her view. Falcon, we are getting weather warnings, the airborne controller radioed. You need to exit that valley now, or you might not be able to get out. The team is not at the extraction point yet, Sarah replied calmly. I am staying until they are safe. There was a pause. Then a different voice came on the radio. It was Captain Morgan. Chen, this is Morgan. I understand your commitment to the team, but you are no good to anyone if you crash into a mountain or run out of fuel. You have done your job. Let the medevac handle the extraction. Sarah considered his words. He was right from a tactical standpoint. She had accomplished her mission and was now taking unnecessary risks. But as she looked at her sensors, watching those small figures struggling across the terrain, she knew she could not leave. Not yet. With respect, sir, I have fuel for 15 more minutes, and visibility is still adequate. I am not leaving my people until they are on that helicopter. Another pause. Then Morgan spoke again, his voice different this time. Understood, Falcon. Be safe. Bring yourself home. The team reached the extraction point with 5 minutes to spare. Sarah watched the medevac helicopter land, the crew rushing to load the wounded. Rodriguez gave a thumbs-up signal despite his injury, letting Sarah know he was okay. Jenkins was unconscious but stable. The prisoners were secured, and the entire team was aboard within 90 seconds. Ground 1, all personnel are loaded. We are lifting off now. Falcon, you are cleared to return to base. Thank you for staying with us. Sarah finally allowed herself to breathe. Anytime, Ground 1. See you at home. She turned her aircraft toward base, climbing out of the valley just as the clouds closed in completely behind her. Her hands were shaking now, the adrenaline finally catching up with her. She had pushed her limits and the limits of her aircraft, but everyone was safe. That was all that mattered. The landing was smooth despite her exhaustion. Chief Garcia was waiting, as always, but this time her face was more serious as she inspected the damage to the aircraft. You have bullet holes, ma'am. Quite a few of them, actually. One came pretty close to a fuel line. Sarah climbed down and looked at the damage. She had been lucky. A few inches different, and she might not have made it home. Sorry about the bird, Chief. I will try to avoid getting shot next time. Garcia smiled slightly. Just glad you made it back. The plane can be fixed. You cannot be replaced. The aftermath of the Valley mission changed everything. Word spread quickly through the special operations community about the pilot who had stayed behind in deteriorating weather and under enemy fire to protect her team. Sarah found herself receiving attention she had not sought and did not particularly want. There were commendations, interviews with senior leadership, and even talk of medals. But all she cared about was that Rodriguez and Jenkins were recovering well. She visited them both in the medical facility the day after the mission. Jenkins was awake this time, his shoulder heavily bandaged, but his spirits good. He grinned when he saw her enter. If I keep getting shot on your missions, people are going to think you are bad luck, he joked. Sarah smiled, relieved to see him doing well. Or maybe you just need to work on your dodging skills. Jenkins laughed, then winced at the pain it caused. Seriously though, ma'am, thank you for what you did out there. That sniper would have taken out half the team if you had not gotten him. I was just doing my job, Sarah said. Same as you? Yeah, but you stayed when you could have left, Jenkins replied. That means something. Rodriguez was in the next room, his leg in a cast, but otherwise looking strong. He was sitting up in bed, arguing with a nurse about when he could return to duty. When he saw Sarah, his face broke into a wide smile. There she is, the craziest pilot in the Navy. You know, you are not supposed to fly that low in those conditions, right? I seem to remember someone telling me that rules are just suggestions when lives are on the line, Sarah shot back. Rodriguez laughed. I might have said something like that once. Guess you were paying attention. He grew more serious. You saved our lives out there, Sarah. All of us. We would not have made it without you, Sarah. Felt emotion welling up, but pushed it down. You would have done the same for me. Without hesitation, Rodriguez agreed. That is what being part of this team means. You get that now. We are not just co-workers. We are family. The word hit Sarah harder than she expected. Family. She had colleagues before, fellow pilots she respected and worked well with. But this was different. These men had accepted her fully, not because she was perfect or because she never made mistakes, but because when it mattered most, she had proven she would sacrifice anything for them. And they would do the same for her. Commander Hartley found her later that day in the ready room. He looked tired, but satisfied. The mission had been a complete success despite the challenges. The high-value target was in custody. Valuable intelligence had been gathered. And despite the injuries, everyone had come home. Walk with me, he said to Sarah. They went outside, walking along the flight line as the sun began to set. Hartley was quiet for a while, just walking and thinking. Finally, he spoke. When you first showed up here, I was not sure this was going to work. Not because of you specifically, but because integrating someone from outside our tight-knit community is always difficult. We have our ways of doing things, our culture, our standards. I worried that bringing in an outsider, especially for something as sensitive as close air support, might create more problems than it solved. Sarah listened without interrupting, sensing he had more to say. But you proved me wrong, Hartley continued. You did not try to become one of us. You stayed true to who you are while learning to work within our framework. You brought skills and perspectives that made us better, and you were willing to learn from us in return. That is rare. I have seen a lot of operators come and go, and what you have accomplished in just a few months is remarkable. Thank you, sir. That means a lot coming from you. Hartley stopped walking and turned to face her. There is something you need to know. Your assignment with us was always meant to be temporary, a test case to see if this kind of integration could work. Well, it worked better than anyone expected. Command wants to make this permanent and expand the program. They want you to help train other pilots to work with special operations, teams the way you have with us. Sarah felt a mix of emotions. Pride at being recognized, but also apprehension about leaving the team she had grown so close to. What about Team 7? Will I still work with you? Absolutely, Hartley assured her. You will still be our primary air support. But you will also be teaching others, sharing what you have learned. This is bigger than just one team now, Sarah. What you have done here is going to change how we conduct operations. That is your legacy. Over the next 6 months, Sarah took on her new role while continuing to fly missions with SEAL Team 7. She developed training programs, worked with other pilots to teach them the intricacies of close air support for special operations, and served as a bridge between the aviation community and the special operations community. It was challenging work, often frustrating as she dealt with bureaucracy and resistance to change. But she persisted, driven by the knowledge that what she was doing would save lives. The nickname, Falcon, took on new meaning throughout the community. It was no longer just a call sign, but a symbol of excellence in integrated operations. Young pilots aspired to be selected for the Special Operations Support Program that Sarah had helped create. The SEALs, once skeptical of outsiders, now specifically requested pilots who had been through Sarah's training. The culture was changing, slowly but surely. One evening, nearly a year after her first day at the SEAL compound, Sarah attended a ceremony honoring the team for their recent operations. She stood in her dress uniform, watching as medals were presented and accomplishments recognized. When her name was called, she walked forward to receive the Distinguished Flying Cross for her actions during the Valley mission. As the medal was pinned to her uniform, she looked out at the audience and saw her team, her family, standing and applauding. After the ceremony, the team gathered for their traditional meal together. Sarah sat among them, listening to their stories and jokes, feeling completely at home. Patterson's daughter had won her soccer tournament. Rodriguez was back to full duty and already complaining about the training schedule. Jenkins was planning his wedding and trying to decide which team members would be groomsmen.
Oh.
These were the moments that mattered. The quiet times between the chaos when they could just be human together. Commander Hartley raised his glass for a toast. To Falcon, he said. The pilot who taught us that trust is not about where you come from or what uniform you wear. It is about character, courage, and commitment. You earned your place among us the hard way, and you made us better in the process. To Falcon, the team echoed the toast, and Sarah felt tears threatening despite her best efforts to maintain composure. Thank you, she said quietly. All of you. When I first came here, I thought I had to prove I was tough enough, skilled enough, good enough to stand beside you. But you taught me something more important. You taught me that being part of a team means being willing to be vulnerable, to trust others completely, and to put their well-being above your own. You trusted me with your lives, and that is a responsibility I will never take lightly. Rodriguez grinned. Great speech. Now, can we eat? I am starving. The table erupted in laughter, the solemn moment giving way to the easy camaraderie that defined their relationship. As Sarah looked around at these faces she had come to know so well, she realized that she had found something rare and precious. She had found a place where she belonged, not because she had conformed or changed who she was, but because she had stayed true to herself while opening her heart to others. Years later, when people asked Sarah about her time with SEAL Team 7, she would smile and tell them it was the most challenging and rewarding experience of her career. She would talk about the missions, the close calls, and the successes. But what she remembered most were the small moments. Rodriguez teaching her to make proper coffee at 3 in the morning before a mission. Patterson showing her pictures of his daughter. Jenkins asking her advice about marriage. Commander Hartley's rare smiles when a mission went perfectly. These were the memories that stayed with her. The human connections that made all the danger and sacrifice worthwhile. The program Sarah helped create grew and evolved, becoming a standard part of how the military conducted special operations. Dozens of pilots went through her training, learning not just the technical skills of close air support, but the mindset of integration and teamwork. Many of them went on to forge their own bonds with special operations teams, creating a network of trust and capability that made American forces more effective than ever before. Sarah continued to fly missions with Team 7 for 5 more years before accepting a position as an instructor at the Naval War College. Even then, she stayed in touch with the team, attending their reunions and celebrations. She was there when Rodriguez got married, when Patterson's daughter graduated from college, and when Jenkins had his first child. She was family, and that bond would never break, regardless of time or distance. They called her Falcon because of her sharp eyes and deadly precision. But she earned that name through something more profound than skill. She earned it through courage, integrity, and an unwavering commitment to the people who trusted her with their lives. In a world where strength is often measured by physical prowess and aggression, Sarah proved that true strength comes from the heart. From the willingness to be vulnerable while remaining resolute, to adapt while staying authentic, and to build bridges while maintaining boundaries. Her story became legend in the military, told and retold to new generations of service members. But for those who knew her best, for the men of SEAL Team 7 who had fought beside her and trusted her with their lives, she would always be simply Falcon, their guardian angel, their teammate, their friend, and their family. And that, more than any medal or commendation, was the legacy she was most proud of.